Hello everybody, welcome back to Screen Stars. I'm here today to give you a review on Day of the Dead Bloodline, the remake of the George A. Romero classic of the same name. Now, I am not a huge fanboy when it comes to zombie movies, and certainly even the George A. Romero movies, even though I recognise that he is um, a forefront in that field. He basically invented it. So I've seen all the old Dawn of the Dead, Day of the Dead movies. I've seen the Zack Snyder remake of Dawn of the Dead. And this is, I suppose you could say, like a cheap follow-on to the Zack Snyder film. But while this film I think is decent enough, I do think it has a lot of faults. But what we get this movie is um, a fairly similar film to the George Romero's version. And if you've seen that film, you know what you're going to get here. It's pretty much the same story with some alterations. It focuses on a group of survivors that are actually living in like a military base. And they discover a zombie that has more in common with them than they initially thought, and they're doing experiments on it. And as you can imagine, with this being a zombie film, and especially if you've seen the original version of this, it doesn't go to plan. And that's the story that we get here. Now, let's get some of the positives out of the way first. It does have a decent budget to it, this movie. It's not your low rent, low budget movie, but it isn't certainly cinema worthy either. The effects, generally speaking, are pretty good. The zombie attacks are pretty effective and pretty graphic when they happen. You know, you see all the flesh being torn off and the blood going everywhere, and they don't really hold back in that area. So general horror fans, I think, are going to have a fairly decent time with this movie. However, that's not to say it doesn't come with issues, because it does. It comes with a lot for me. Um, I think some of the acting at times can be a bit low rent. Not jarringly so, but it didn't overly impress me throughout, really, the acting. Um, the storytelling here I thought was done particularly bad, and there's an awful lot really. There's just simple things like the main character, the woman doctor, liked to go jogging every morning, and the military camp that they were based at had like this flimsy fence on the outside. That was the only thing keeping the zombies out. And she used to run close to the fence, and it aggravated the zombies, and they'd rattle on the chain link fence, and you'd be like, why would you run so close to the fence and aggravate them? You just wouldn't do it, because it looked like to me just a few simple pushes and that fence was going to be over. It was very flimsy. It just, decisions like that just really bother me in movies, because you wouldn't do it. The zombie that they find, who is supposed to be intelligent, which is similar to the original, although they dial this one up to 11 a bit, is more like human this time than it was in the original. There was a couple of things that they did with that bothered me. You know, at one point he's crawling around a vent in the underground base, in the air vents, growling and snarling, and nobody heard him or noticed him. It a bit silly, really. They make some really bad decisions in the movie. Everybody, right from the doctor right to the military people, they make some really bad decisions. And one example is they need to experiment on a couple of the zombies. This doctor does, so they decide to go out and filter them in one at a time through the fence. I mean, immediately I'm thinking that's a bad idea, and as it turned out to be. And they've got like one guy holding this flimsy fence open as they're letting them in, and needless to say, he couldn't hold them back. And it was just decisions like that. It's just like no rational people, especially military-minded people, would do that sort of thing without extreme measures put in place first, no matter what the consequences were and what the outcome was, whether they were going to get some medical breakthrough. It doesn't matter. You wouldn't do it. I thought the voiceover work by the main character, the female, she does some voiceover now and again. I thought that was quite lazily done, and she doesn't have a talent for voiceover, that's certainly for sure. But other than that, I mean, I feel like I'm ragging on it a little bit. I didn't really dislike this movie. I thought it was certainly watchable. I'm not a huge fan of the zombie genre anyway. For me, if it has to be a zombie film, it's got to do something different with it, and I don't feel as though this movie did. I mean, it's a remake anyway, so we've seen it all before, and what they did give us, I don't think was vastly different than what I've seen anyway previously. So it's okay. I think if you're a fan of the George A. Romero version, you're probably going to get riled by this one a little bit, because it's not as good as the original, not by any stretch. It's not as good as the Zack Snyder film that he made in the early noughties, the Dawn of the Dead remake. It's not as good as that. And I think this film could probably have done with having a few extra million put into the budget and either really going for it or just not bothering with it at all. But fans of the zombie genre might find something here to enjoy. I'll give it a 5.5 out of 10. Thanks for watching.